What's up, Space Pirates? This is your captain, the ever-charming Dr. Disaster, and Dragon Age The Veilguard is set to come out in about 2 weeks, right on Halloween, and the shills are really shilling for this game. Every other article that I see recommended to me these days is something telling me who I should romance in Dragon Age The Veilguard. This is the sort of thing that bad games have to do in order to prop themselves up. They have to have corporate media swoop in and try to drum up interest, because there really isn't much interest among gamers. Sure, the modern audience is super excited about this game, but that isn't saying much. Repeatedly, we have seen how big the modern audience really is. Games that are made for people who care about pronoun shit and top surgery scars on their characters, those games have been performing like crap.
Oh no.
Yeah, it might be time for the people at Bioware to panic, because patterns have been emerging this year, and worse than that for them, so far the sales data doesn't look promising. We are only a couple weeks out from release, and the game is still sitting at only number 61 on the Steam chart. But worse than that, I have been given access to sales data from a number of video game retail stores above and beyond my original contacts in retail, and the trends do not look good for this game. It seems that no matter how hard the shills try to shill this turd to the public, people just are not interested in buying it.
Love me. No.
Love me.
How about no?
Love me!
Would you please shut the hell up?
Alright, me hearties, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter, where I keep a list of woke and DEI infected games pinned to my account at all times for your reference. My handle on there is Dr. Disaster 1. But anyhow, ever since the first trailer came out for Dragon Age The Veilguard, it was obvious to see that Bioware had lost the plot and made something completely different than previous Dragon Age games. I don't know what feature I find more repellent. The character creator, which allows top surgery scars but doesn't allow characters to have a chest size larger than an A cup on a female, is pretty unappealing. The bright and cartoonish color palette makes it look terrible as well. The darkspawn that look like cartoon characters, Morrigan being nerfed. The game only brings over 3 choices from previous games. There are just so many shitty things about this game that I can't list them all here. Overall, the impression that I get from Dragon Age The Veilguard whenever I look at trailers or videos is that this is an unserious parody of itself. It's practically a cartoon, and it lacks the dark and somber tone that the old games had and which Dragon Age fans loved so much. After a decade of development, you would expect more out of Bioware, but apparently this game, where the only thing the developers seem to care about is who you can romance, and everyone is canonically pansexual, that is what you should expect from something directed by a queerosexual gendermancer.
What the hell is even that?
Apparently, I'm not the only one who thinks this is extremely off-putting, because the sales data that I'm hearing about from retail stores is not very encouraging. At least, not if you're someone working for Bioware. I now have several sources feeding me data that I have done the due diligence on and verified. My original source is from someone who runs 9 retail stores, and in those stores they have now pre-sold 9 copies of the game, which is tracking well behind Star Wars Outlaws. 2 weeks out from the release of Star Wars Outlaws, and those same 9 stores had sold 17 copies of that game. I have another source that has access to the sales data of over a dozen stores, and they have pre-sold 14 copies so far. Once again, this is tracking well behind Star Wars Outlaws, and I probably don't need to remind you that that game sold poorly, considering its status as a major AAA release. It was so bad that in many ways it likely irrevocably damaged Ubisoft. But anyhow, those are the two sources that I've been going with for a while, but others have been reaching out to me for the past few weeks after I first started talking about Dragon Age sales data. It takes me a while to vet sources. I don't like throwing information out there until I have confirmed that these people are who they say they are. But anyhow, I now have two more sources that are feeding me sales information on the retail side of things. The first of the new sources is from a person with access to sales data from 17 retail stores. This person has data showing that they sold 41 copies of Star Wars Outlaws in pre-sales about 2 weeks prior to that game's launch, but with Dragon Age, they've only sold 13 copies so far. That is quite a tick down. And yes, I know, the first thing Dragon Age defenders will say is that nobody buys retail anymore. And yes, it is true that the majority of people buy digitally, which I think is a poor choice, but whatever. The point is that we are comparing this to Star Wars Outlaws, so you can see how far behind the game is selling. Star Wars Outlaws is a perfect frame of reference since it was considered a failure across the board and because it is such a recent game. Anyhow, I do have one more source here. This is from someone who has access to the data of 5 stores, and in those 5 stores, they've sold 6 copies of the game. For reference, Star Wars Outlaws had sold 13 copies at this same stage 2 weeks prior to its release. Across the board, it looks like Dragon Age might be tracking to around half the sales of Star Wars Outlaws. Now, most of these stores are in high population areas with heavy traffic, though admittedly, a few of them are smaller stores. Still, on average, they are in larger places, so what we're seeing is a pretty low interest in this game as a whole. It's not hard to guess why, considering all of the stupid shit that has come out talking about this game, the modern audience that they are so desperately trying to please, as if we are still living like it's 2018 or something like that. But that group of people that they want to make happy just aren't turning out for the game thus far. I do still think that the game will have reasonably decent numbers on Steam when all is said and done. It won't be like Concord or Dustborn or anything like that. This game is way too well known, but I suspect it won't come close to the likes of God of War from a few years ago. It's selling worse than Star Wars Outlaws, and keep in mind it took a decade to develop, so I promise that this was not a cheap project. I'm sure it cost at least $200 million by the time you factor in marketing, maybe more considering how long it took to make this, though admittedly 10 years ago when they started doing Dragon Age, the cost of AAA gaming was a lot less expensive. But I'm gonna leave it there. Drop some mockery of Dragon Age The Veilguard into the comment section below, and we will talk there.
Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.